The Nordic model beauty pageant, when rhinestones become evidence, sequins, scholarships, and selective amnesia. Beauty pageants are packaged as wholesome, empowering, and character building, confidence, scholarships, networking, personal growth. It's all part of the pitch. Contestants are praised for discipline and poise, families invest heavily, and communities celebrate the winners. Judges score bodies, personality, and polish, and no one blinks because it all feels familiar. But underneath the rhinestones, the industry runs on intense beauty standards, high financial barriers, emotional strain, and clear power imbalances. In child pageants, especially, concerns about consent, coercion, and early sexualization are not fringe. They're well documented. And yet, pageants remain not just legal, but culturally endorsed. Lipstick labor is still labor. The risks here aren't hidden, they're normalized. Contestants face body scrutiny, eating disorders, and high financial costs for gowns, travel, coaching, and presentation. The entire system is structured around judgment. Judges decide worth, directors control visibility, and sponsors reward a narrow, marketable version of femininity. Winners gain access to opportunity. Everyone else absorbs a quieter lesson about what they lack. None of this is unique to pageants. Modeling, acting, dance, and athletics operate under similar pressures. The difference is not the presence of harm, it's how society chooses to respond to it. In most industries, the answer is regulation. Here, it's a celebration, the rhinestone crackdown. Now imagine lawmakers decide the industry itself is inherently exploitative. They argue no one would willingly submit to this level of scrutiny without coercion, whether cultural, economic, or social. Scholarships and sponsorships become proof of commodification. Choice becomes suspect. So instead of regulating pageants, they criminalize them, not just abusive practices, but the entire structure. Suddenly, participation itself is framed as evidence of harm. Congrats, you're all criminals now. Once that shift happens, the entire ecosystem becomes suspect. Organizers could be arrested, coaches prosecuted, makeup artists, photographers, and designers are accused of profiting from exploitation, sponsors and venues investigated, parents scrutinized, judges are treated as participants in a harmful marketplace, or policymakers might opt for a kinder version. Contestants remain legal, but everyone around them is criminalized. On paper, this looks protective. In reality, it dismantles the systems that make the industry visible and accountable in the first place. Safety, but make it illegal. Criminalizing the infrastructure doesn't eliminate the industry. It pushes it into the shadows. Pageants don't disappear, they become less transparent, less regulated, and harder to monitor. Standards erode, oversight weakens. Contestants have fewer protections and less recourse when something goes wrong. Documentation becomes risky. Ethical professionals leave. Those willing to operate quietly remain. This is the consistent outcome of prohibition. Not less activity, just less safety. Your sashes now exhibit A. Once something is criminalized, ordinary participation starts to look like evidence. A sash becomes proof. A contract becomes proof. A coaching invoice, a travel receipt, a headshot, all proof. The very tools that allow people to organize, prepare, and operate safely are reframed as indicators of exploitation. Safety infrastructure becomes a liability. That logic isn't new. It's just being applied somewhere unfamiliar. The part where this stops being hypothetical. Break the industry down, and the discomfort sharpens. Child pageants are where the argument feels most intuitive. France has already banned them for minors, and research on psychological harm is substantial. Many people would support that policy without hesitation, which is exactly how moral clarity around protection often expands into broader criminalization. Adult pageants complicate things. Contestants sign contracts that regulate behavior far beyond the stage, tying economic opportunity to compliance with a specific image. In most industries, that would raise serious labor concerns. Here, it's standard practice. And then there's coaching, the system that trains contestants, including children, to perform femininity for evaluation. If third parties are inherently exploitative, the logic doesn't stop there. It extends to the entire ecosystem. So, is it harm or just vibes? This is where the argument starts to wobble. If risk, pressure, inequality, and the possibility of exploitation justify criminalization, then a long list of industries should be illegal. Modeling, influencer culture, acting, dance, even weddings, if we're being honest about performance and expectation. But we don't criminalize those spaces. We regulate them, however, imperfectly. Unless the labor is already stigmatized, then suddenly risk becomes proof of exploitation and participation becomes proof of coercion. The real question that no one likes. So what happens if we criminalize beauty pageants? Nothing surprising. We punish facilitators rather than fixing the conditions. We push the industry into less accountable spaces. We reduce transparency while claiming protection. We confuse visibility with harm and performance with victimhood. And then we call it morality or feminism. But it's still just criminalization, and criminalization has never been a serious strategy for making gendered labor safer. It's a strategy for deciding which kinds of femininity are acceptable and which ones need to be controlled. At Swap Behind Bars, we believe people deserve the same rights, safety, and dignity at work, no matter what kind of labor they do. We are a national network led by current and former sex workers, providing support, advocacy, and resources for people impacted by the criminalization of the sex trade. This series is a thought experiment. We take the arguments often used to justify criminalizing sex work and apply them to other industries to see how they hold up. At times, these comparisons intentionally push toward the edge of the absurd, and we're aware that bordering on the ridiculous is a risk. But that's part of the point. When the logic starts to feel uncomfortable or exaggerated, it often reveals just how inconsistent or selectively applied that logic already is. Our goal is not to trivialize other professions or dismiss the real harms that can exist within them. It's to make those harms visible in a different way, and to ask why criminalization is treated as a solution in some contexts but not others. History shows that arresting workers does not eliminate risk, exploitation, or poverty. It shifts them. It hides them. It pushes people further away from safety, support, and accountability. This series invites a deeper conversation about labor, autonomy, and what real worker protection actually looks like, especially when we are willing to follow the logic through.